Hello again. So we've covered torque. Hopefully you finished that without too much problems. And now we're going to talk about kinetic energy. So instead of just regular old kinetic energy, we now have rotational kinetic energy. So kinetic energy of something rotating. So let's go ahead and write our review formula, which is just Ke equals 1/2 mv squared. So now, instead of Ke, we have Ke rot, or rotational kinetic energy. Okay? We still keep the 1/2. Instead of m, we now have I, our moment of inertia. And instead of v, we have omega. Okay? And it's once again squared. So it's a very similar thing. Now, one thing to talk about is how to know if something has just Ke, just rotational kinetic energy, or both. Okay? So what we need to think about is if something is just rotating in place, it's usually easiest to just describe it as just Ke rot. If something is stationary and moving side to side, okay, but not rotating at all, then it's just going to be regular Ke. Okay? If I have something that's rotating and moving side to side, in that case, I have both. Okay? Where it can get a little tricky is if I have something that's moving maybe like this. Okay? In this case, I can either take it as Ke rot, or I can just take it as Ke at one of these points. Okay? So I'd say, okay, what's the Ke at this point? What's the Ke at this point? Or I can say, okay, well, it's rotating about some sort of central point here in the middle, and so that's Ke rot. But in this case, I wouldn't be able to say it's both. Okay, I would have to pick one. Okay, now if it's doing this thing where it's rotating and moving side to side, in that case, I do have both. Okay, so let's kind of do what we did before, where we take something that we know how to do and we're going to translate it into, or from, linear land into angular land. So we have, what is the speed of a 0.145 kg baseball if its kinetic energy is 109 joules? So it's going to be, what is the angular velocity of a 0.145 kg meters squared moment of inertia ball if its Ke rot is 109 joules. Okay? So we can still use the same formula, or we use our rotation formula. So Ke rot equals 1/2 I omega squared. Ke rot is just 109 equals 1/2 I is now 0.145 times omega squared. And then I can just solve for omega. Okay? So you have, I think, a couple questions here where I want you to do the same thing. So we're just changing the linear question into an angular question. Okay? So that shouldn't be too bad. This should be fairly simple for you. Once again, if you have any questions, make sure you shoot me an email.